Episode 30. A great whirling whisper made him look to the sky. The police helicopters were rising, so far away that it seemed someone had blown the gray head off a dry dandelion flower. 24 of them flurried, wavering, indecisive, 3 miles off, like butterflies puzzled by autumn. And then they were plummeting down to land, one by one, here, there, softly kneading the streets, where, turning back to beetles, they shrieked along the boulevards, or just as suddenly leapt back into the air, continuing their aerial search. And here was the gas station, its attendants busy now with customers. Approaching from the rear, Montag entered the men's washroom. Through the aluminum wall, he heard a radio voice saying, "War has been declared." The gas was being pumped outside. The men in the Beetles were talking, and the attendants were talking about the engines, the gas, the money owed. Montag stood, trying to make himself feel the shock of the quiet statement from the radio. But nothing would happen. The war would have to wait for him to come to it in his personal file, an hour, 2 hours from now. He washed his hands and face and toweled himself dry, making little sound. He came out of the washroom and shut the door carefully and walked into the darkness, then at last stood again on the edge of the empty boulevard. There it lay, a game for him to win, a vast bowling alley in the cool morning. The boulevard was as clean as the surface of an arena 2 minutes before the appearance of certain unnamed victims and certain unknown killers. The air over and above the vast concrete river trembled with the warmth of Montag's body alone. It was incredible how he felt his temperature could cause the whole immediate world to vibrate. He was a phosphorescent target. He knew it. He felt it. And now he must begin his little walk. 3 blocks away, a few headlights glared. Montag drew a deep breath. His lungs were like burning brooms in his chest. His mouth was sucked dry from running. His throat tasted of bloody iron, and there was rusted steel in his feet. What about those lights there? Once you started walking, you'd have to gauge how fast those beetles could make it down here. Well, how far was it to the other curb? It seemed like 100 yards. Probably not 100, but figure for that anyway. Figure that with him going very slowly, at a nice stroll, it might take as much as 30 seconds, 40 seconds to walk all the way. The beetles? Once started, they could leave 3 blocks behind them in about 15 seconds. So even if halfway across he started to run, he put his right foot out, and then his left foot, and then his right, and walked on the empty avenue. Even if the street were entirely empty, of course, you couldn't be sure of a safe crossing, for a car could appear suddenly over the rise 4 blocks further on and be on and past you before you had taken a dozen breaths. He decided not to count his steps. He looked neither left nor right. The light from the overhead lamps seemed as bright and revealing as the midday sun, and just as hot. He listened to the sound of the car picking up speed 2 blocks away on his right. Its movable headlights jerked back and forth suddenly and caught at Montag. "Keep going." Montag faltered, got a grip on the books, and forced himself not to freeze. Instinctively, he took a few quick running steps and talked out loud to himself, then pulled up to stroll again. He was now half across the street, but the roar from the Beetle's engines whined higher as it put on speed. The police, of course. They see me. But slow now. Slow. Quiet. Don't turn. Don't look. Don't seem concerned. Walk. That's it. Walk. Walk. The Beetle was rushing. The Beetle was roaring. The Beetle raised its speed. The Beetle was whining. The Beetle was in high thunder. The Beetle came skimming. The Beetle came in a single whistling trajectory fired from an invisible rifle. It was up to 120 miles per hour. It was up to 130 at least. Montag clamped his jaws. The heat of the racing headlights burned his cheeks, it seemed, and jittered his eyelids and flushed the sour sweat out all over his body. He began to shuffle idiotically and talk to himself, and then he broke and just ran. He put out his legs as far as they would go, and down, and then far out again, and down, and back, and out, and down, and back. God! God! He dropped a book, broke pace, almost turned, changed his mind, plunged on, yelling in concrete emptiness. The Beetle, scuttling after its running food, 200, 100 feet away, 90, 80, 70. Montag gasping, flailing his hands, legs up, down, out, closer, closer, hooting, calling, his eyes burnt white now, just as his head jerked about to confront the flashing glare. Now, the Beetle was swallowed in its own light. Now it was nothing but a torch hurtling upon him, all sound, all blare, now almost on top of him. He stumbled and fell. It's done. It's over. But the falling made a difference. An instant before reaching him, the wild Beetle cut and swerved out. It was gone. Montag lay flat, his head down. Wisps of laughter trailed back to him with the blue exhaust from the Beetle. His right hand was extended above him, flat. Across the extreme tip of his middle finger, he saw now, as he lifted that hand, a faint 1/16 of an inch of black tread where tire had touched in passing. He looked at that black line with disbelief, getting to his feet. That wasn't the police, he thought. He looked down the boulevard now. It was clear now. A car full of children, all ages, God knew, from 12 to 16. Out whistling, yelling, hurrahing, they had seen a man, a very extraordinary sight, a man strolling, a rarity, and simply said, "Let's get him," not knowing he was the fugitive Mr. Montag. Simply a number of children out for a long night of roaring 500 or 600 miles in a few moonlit hours, their faces icy with wind, and coming home or not coming at dawn, alive or not alive. That made the adventure. They would have killed me, thought Montag, swaying, the air still torn and stirring about him in dust, touching his bruised cheek. For no reason at all in the world, they would have killed me.